Neve, Harding, Bellara, Taash, Lucanis, Davrin, and Emmrich are all the companions in Dragon Age Veilguard, but which faction are they a part of? How do they work in combat? Today, I'll break down all their abilities, what I got to play at the preview, as well as give some information about their backstory and a little bit more as well, so let's go! Let me know who your favorite companion is in the comments down below. We'll start with my personal favorite based on my time with the game, and that is Neve. Thanks to OperaGX for sponsoring this video. So we all use them, right? Web browsers are almost as critical to our daily lives as water, food, and good quality memes. But most web browsers are poorly optimized and don't meet your customization needs. OperaGX is the solution. Not only is it the most well-optimized browser, as you can limit its CPU or RAM usage using GX control. You can see that it is using less than Edge right here. It's also the customization king of browsers, especially with the GX mods. In OperaGX, you can mod it with key customizations like background music. Absolutely love this, by the way. I'm always listening to like lo-fi or ambient music when I'm writing scripts for videos, keyboard sounds, opening and closing tab sounds, themes and colors for the browser, wallpapers, everything you could possibly think of. There are official mods made by OperaGX, like this lo-fi chill one that I've been using a little bit, but there are heaps of others, like some really cool Star Wars ones or Fallout or even Starfield. Having the apps on the sidebar is also massive as well. Like I often like to check my social media while I'm working, and this just allows me to open Twitter and like my own posts without having to open an entirely new web page. There are integrations as well for Facebook Messenger, Discord, and WhatsApp and TikTok and Instagram. OperaGX is also equipped with an import tool that allows you to quickly import all of your settings from your previous browser to OperaGX, like browsing history, bookmarks, and cookies. It's also compatible with every Google Chrome extension. Use my link in the description to download OperaGX today. I'd also love to know what your favorite GX mod is if you are using that customization feature. I've been using this Ahsoka one quite a bit since I found it. Thanks OperaGX for sponsoring this video. Neve is a cynic fighting for a better future. Neve is both a private detective and a member of Tevinter's rebellious shadow dragons, born and raised in the working class neighborhood of Minrathous, which is that very first city that you do go to in the tutorial. She does not believe in the superiority of mages. Now, Neve's combat is mostly based around her being a mage, specifically an ice mage, using a lot of freezing and slow attacks to slow down enemies and like sort of crowd control a little bit. Now, she can apply weakened and she can detonate sundered. Starting off with Icebreaker, Neve conjures a shard of ice to launch at her enemies. It fires 6 projectiles at the target. This does cold damage. It has a pretty long cooldown of 40 seconds, and this is the one that does detonate Sundered. Replenish is a standard healing ability, allowing Neve to heal Rook for a percentage of their health. Blizzard summons a swirling vortex of ice to thrash and hamper her enemies, deals damage each second to all enemies in the area of effect. So this is a damage over time blizzard effect that will essentially, you'll put in an area, it'll deal cold damage for a period of time. And then the one that I used the most during my preview, which was time slow. So essentially it just slows down the time for all of the enemies. So you can follow up with different attacks, like set things up. And I found this really valuable when you get surrounded by a lot of darkspawn. And Glacial Pace, which applies weakened. It also does cold damage. Neve concentrates her ice magic into a single bolt, stopping enemies in their tracks. Neve is also a member of the Shadow Dragons, which is a resistance opposing corrupt rulers and slavery in Tevinter. They are determined to bring justice to the people. Now, I am working on a video that's going to go in depth with all of the different factions, including everything you see in the character creator. So I will link that here once that is out if you're looking for more information about the factions specifically. But we'll move on to Lance Harding. Now, you may remember Harding from Dragon Age Inquisition. Harding is a dwarven scout that has a positive outlook and a ready bow, as well as unexpected magical powers. At her core, Harding is still a girl from Ferelden. She loves adventure, animals, nature, and is fiercely protective of her family and friends. Harding uses her bow mostly in combat to stagger enemies and like shred through armor. She's mostly a physical based companion with a couple of little exceptions. Now, she is a rogue and she's an Inquisition agent. Now, being an Inquisition agent, she's not actually part of any of the main factions that you'll pick during character creation, which is something to point out. So I don't want to say that she's like the vanilla companion, because she's definitely not, but it's just something to point out there that she's not a part of any of those factions that you'll be picking during character creator. Another detail to note is that in most of the footage we've seen of Harding, she has a lot of these scars on her face and everything. Now, this is from an intro sequence during the tutorial. Now, if you're wondering if this always happens as part of the story, it does not. There is a choice here that you will make. I won't spoil anything at all, between two companions. One that you take with you will end up like this because of injuries they sustain during that section of the game at the very start, but it doesn't have to be Harding if you're like, you know, she's going to be scarred the whole game, right? If that's something that bothers you, just wanted to point that out. Now, Harding can apply Sundered and Overwhelmed, and starting with her abilities, we'll start with Seismic Shot. This is a physical-based ability where Harding lets loose a powerful bow shot, creating a mid-air shockwave that concusses enemies caught in the blast. This deals a high amount of stagger, and it's very likely to disrupt enemies. Now, just quick note here, stagger is that purple health bar you'll see on enemies when that bar is filled. You'll be able to do like a finisher and like finish them off. Her next ability is Adrenaline Rush. Harding gives a rousing shout, motivating you to act with renewed determination. This enhances your damage for a period of time. It does have a 24-second cooldown. In my testing, I don't actually know how long this buff specifically lasts, but chances are it's not that full 24 seconds. It seemed to be about like 10-15 seconds based on when I was playing. Heavy Draw. Harding draws her bowstring back as far as it will go, unleashing a devastating shot. This also deals physical damage with a long cooldown, and it detonates Overwhelmed. Soothing Potion. An Expert Scout carries only the best resources to Special Brewery is a pick-me-up like no other. Harding tosses a restorative tincture to you, granting rejuvenation. Now, this will heal you over time. And lastly, Harding has Shred, which applies Sundered, so Harding shreds her opponent's defenses with a decisive shot. This also deals a high amount of stagger. Something I want to note here as well is that your companions will level up based on your bond level with them. Now, you increase their bond by taking them on various missions, completing quests for them, building that relationship with them. They don't gain experience in that traditional sense. Each bond level you level up, they'll gain 2 skill points that you can then invest in their skill tree, and you will always have all these abilities we're talking about here today unlocked, regardless of whether you're at like bond level 1 or 10 or what have you. It's just those additional benefits and modifiers to those abilities that you actually gain. Bellara is a veil jumper that is creative, romantic, and obsessed with uncovering the secrets of ancient Elvahan. She has a strong sense of self, a clear identity of who she is and what she wants, and will push herself to the limit to find the answers she seeks. Now, Bellara is a mage that focuses on electricity damage and like control magic to support her companions and diminish the powers of their foes. Another thing that we'll note with Bellara here is that every companion has a unique like ability that will allow them to manipulate something in the game world. For Bellara, this is the Arlethan Tinkerer. Now, this will allow her to like tinker with like objects in the world that allow you to like open doors or like do various things, right? Every single one of the companions has one of these effects. Now, something to note is that you don't need to have that companion with you at all times in order to use their special effect. Once you've completed their recruitment mission, it'll just be available for you to use, but they all have one of these abilities that allow you to do something in like exploration, like, you know, maybe grapple hook over a distance or something like that, right? Now, Bellara applies Weakens, and she detonates Sundered, and we'll start with Enfeebling Shot for her abilities. This is an electricity damage ability that does apply Weakened, and Bellara fires a magic infused shot from her bow, dousing her target with fade damage. Bellara also has that same time slow effect as Neve, so she can slow down time just like the other mage in your party. Galvanized Tear. Bellara creates a controlled tear in the veil, concentrated on enemies but sparing allies. This draws enemies towards a specific point and deals electricity damage to those that it does pull in. And Bellara also has Replenish, the same as Neve as well. And lastly, Fade Bolts, which detonates Sundereds. This does electricity damage, and Bellara channels the energy of the Fade through her gauntlet to unleash a volley of magic projectiles. Bellara is a Veil Jumper, and the Veil Jumpers are one of the very first factions that you'll interact with in the game, and Bellara is as well. So right in Chapter 1, you'll run into Bellara. She's a very like whimsical, sort of like fun-loving character that I think will vibe with a lot of people. I personally didn't connect with her too much. I preferred some of the other companions, like Taash. Now, Taash is a Kunari dragon hunter allied with the Lords of Fortune. Taash lives for adventure and doesn't mind taking risks, while her interests include sparkling treasures and hitting things with an axe. Taash is also also deeply knowledgeable about many topics. Blunt and straightforward, Taash is a mighty warrior who wields dual axes and breathes out flames, igniting enemies with draconic fury. So she's very fire orientated, just the same as Davrin, our other warrior, which we'll get to in a little bit. Now she does apply overwhelmed and weakened. Now her first ability here is Fire Breath, which is a fire weapon, and you probably guessed what it does. She breathes out fire of draconic fury. It deals damage and applies the burning status to enemies. Dragon's Roar. Taash roars with draconic fury, drawing enemies' attention. This taunts enemies in an area and forces them to briefly focus their attacks on Taash. Dragonfire Strike is a fire damage attack that detonates weakens. Taash lands a fiery overhead strike that leaves enemies concussed, confused, and burning. With Fortune's favor, Taash's luck and Lords of Fallen training all but ensure that you will get out of this battle alive. It grants brief invulnerability. Spitfire is the last ability. Taash spits a searing burst of flame that takes the fight out of an enemy. This deals high stagger and also applies the overwhelmed effect and does fire damage. Now Taash is one that we didn't get to play around with too much in the previous session, but I did really like the brief interactions that we did have with her. Very sort of direct and like straightforward, kind of similar to Iron Bull, but like different in a way. I'm very interested to see more of Taash. Lucanis is an expert assassin for whom the Antivan Crows are a family business. He is poised and pragmatic, but he'd rather not be the center of attention. His focus is usually on his work. Lucanis specializes in executing powerful mages and has earned himself the title of Demon of Varantium. Now, Lucanis is a member of the Antivan Crows, which are basically just straight up like the Assassin's Creed Brotherhood. Like we did get to interact with them a fair bit on Tevinter in our preview, and they are just basically the Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, which is a good thing. Like I actually quite enjoyed dealing with them. Now, Lucanis is a rogue, but he does do a lot of necrotic damage with the dual daggers, and then does have some potions and buffs that he can apply as well. He does apply the Sundered effect and detonates Overwhelmed. Abominate is Lucanis' first ability. Lucanis sweeps the area with demonic strength, deals high barrier damage, and applies knockdown to enemies in that area. Now this does do necrotic damage. Adrenaline Rush is the same that Harding has. This does enhance your damage for a period of time. Eviscerate does necrotic damage and detonates Overwhelmed. Lucanis deals a decisive blow targeting an enemy's weak point at half health or more. This also deals bonus damage. Soothing Potion is the same that we have heard before. This applies rejuvenation to give you a heal over time effect. And lastly, Lucanis has Debilitate. Now this applies Sundered with necrotic damage. Lucanis opens up his enemies with a debilitating strike that also deals high stagger. Davrin is next. Now, Davrin is a Grey Warden warrior. Bold and charming, this Grey Warden has made a name for himself as a monster hunter. Though he has raised in the Dalish clan, he craved excitement and adventure. He'd rather make history than reflect on it. Now he cares for Asan, a young griffin that you can actually pat at the lighthouse. It's very cute. Now, Davrin brings his enemies down hard with a combination of mighty attacks, teaming with Asan to keep their companions out of danger, using a sword and board for the most part. Davrin does apply Overwhelmed and detonates Weakened, and he applies Overwhelmed with Heroic Strike, a quick and decisive strike imbued with the righteous fury of the Grey Wardens. This does deal a high amount of stagger and does fire damage. Now, fire damage is mostly effective against Darkspawn, so that makes perfect sense for Davrin as a Grey Warden. The second ability is In War Victory. Davrin's heroic actions inspire, filling you with power and endurance of the Steadfast Warden. This grants you invulnerability for a period of time. Death from Above. Davrin calls Asan to strike a target from above, dealing a high amount of stagger. This is also fire damage, and this does detonate the weakened status. Battle Cry is Davrin's taunt ability, the same as Taash has it as well, but it's called Dragon's Roar. And lastly, he has Asan Strike to call Asan into attack from the skies from above. This deals bonus armor damage and knocks down enemies, and it also does fire damage. And lastly, we have Emmrich the Mage Morn Watcher. Now, Emmrich is a necromancer of Navari's Morn Watch. This well-meaning scholar comes complete with a skeleton assistant, Manfred. Emmrich is serious about his duty to protect innocence from the occult, as he is about his studies and his interest in the mysteries of the Fade. Now, Emmrich as a necromancer is typically like considered, evil, but from what we've seen of Emmrich, he's like a good necromancer, if that even is a thing. Obviously, he's got Manfred there, which is apparently going to have a lot of fun things, like you can play rock, paper, scissors with Manfred and a whole bunch of other things at the lighthouse. Now, even though Emmrich is a mage like Neve, his abilities are very different, focusing on sort of that necrotic damage aspects. Also, something to note here, we didn't get to see a ton of Emmrich in the previous preview session as well. So we'll have to wait for the full game to sort of learn a bit more about his character, especially like his introduction to the party. Now his abilities here, we'll start with Final Rites. This detonates Sundered. Now Emmrich summons an envoy of the dead who explode in a blast of necrotic energy. He also has Replenish, which heals you for a period of time, which is kind of funny considering like he's all about necromancy and stuff. It's kind of interesting that he has a heal ability that just like straight heals you. Anyway, the bell tolls. Emmrich casts a death curse that after a short delay causes an enemy to explode with necrotic damage. This also applies an effect that targets will take increased damage for a period of time. So definitely something great if you're like following up with different combo abilities there. And we've got time slow here, the same as Neve, so you can slow down time for a period. And lastly, we've got Entangling Spirits, which is another necrotic damage that applies weakened. Emmrich summons spirits to entangle and hinder your enemies, and it does deal a high amount of stagger. Now, one thing I will touch on as well is every single companion has a hidden Veilguard skill that we did not get to see during our preview session. That is the skill in the middle of their skill trees. Exactly how you unlock this, what this does, we do not know yet, but chances are this is going to be something to do with the main story and how the Fade is essentially falling apart. They're probably going to get some sort of ultimate ability type thing, very similar to how Rook has some stuff like that. Very interested to see exactly how that does expand. But let me know your thoughts on the companions in the comments down below. Which ones are you going to romance? Which ones are you going to bring in your party? I'd love to know in the comments. But thank you guys for watching this video till the end. Thank you to our members for supporting the channel. My name is Norza, and I hope you have a great day.